So I just saw Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and it's pretty great. I give it a solid A, 9 out of 10, fun out of 10. Bye! Okay, in all seriousness, if you want to know why I thought this was great, then let's continue. What makes this film stand out the most was the fact that this isn't a Star Wars film, but a Star Wars story. Meaning that this film has to stand out on its own and not be so reliant on the reputation that it's Star Wars. And that's what makes it so cool, because it does succeed at telling its own story, giving us new characters to really latch on to, and never relies too much on the fact that, hey, we're Star Wars. This is not episode 8. Much like Prometheus, let me explain. It's a film that takes place in an already established franchise universe. This is its own beast. It's directed by the homeboy Gareth Edwards, and you might be asking yourself, Juan, why are you being so cringy for calling some guy you know but we don't the homeboy? That's because he has directed 2 movies that I really thought were great, and this continues that trait. He's the guy responsible for making the great and inspirational indie monster movie Monsters. But most of all, he was the man who directed a movie so dear, so genuine to my heart, Godzilla 2014. So when I heard he was in charge of the production of this movie, I was automatically excited to see it. And what I can say is that this film is wonderfully directed, and what I love about Gareth Edwards is that he understands the concept of scale. When you saw Godzilla, you saw how enormous and massive he was. When you saw the monsters for the first time in Monsters, you see how huge and mesmerizing they were. And that's because he understands where to place the camera. It's always the human viewpoint. It's always on the ground. And it shows how huge the Death Star or the AT-ATs are because of that certain decision. Because when you see the AT-ATs for the first time, good lord, it is massive. What's also great are the performances and how the actors are actually playing characters. You latch onto these characters so well, you understand their dilemma, their reasonings on why they are who they are, how well trained they are in combat, and how the movie will help devote time to help them sink into their characters as the film progresses. Like Donnie Yen's character, for instance, who is freaking awesome, but includes an interesting take on the Force, because the Force here is more along the line of faith, believing in the Force, may the Force be with you, and is a really clever way of incorporating the Force than not actually using the Force like the other movies. This is also a darker Star Wars film. This ain't Joe Mama's Star Wars. This movie is actually more along the lines of a war film, and that's the original intention Gareth Edwards and the writers wanted to give to this film. They wanted to make a darker, grittier, and intense film that would be so different compared to the actual Star Wars films. Because this movie really gives the emphasis of wars in Star Wars. And the decision of there being no Force in this film, like there's no Jedis, there's no character in this film who always had the Force in them but never realized that they had it until it was convenient for the plot. There's none of that in this movie, and it makes the stakes even higher. Cause no one here is expendable. There's no telling who would actually make it out of this or not. It makes the action, the mission, and the drama more intense than ever. The visual effects here are great. It's nice to see that blend of practical and computer animated together to make it seem so seamless. Especially the CG, which, good lord, this CG is incredible. The cameos are cool to see, even though there were some that were a little too fan servicey, but nice to see and actually would make sense of the reason why they would actually be there. There's one character that comes back and visually he actually looks really good. Like that's what I'm talking about of how great the visual effects are, not only on the AT-ATs or the spaceships, but some characters. Although there are moments where it did kind of look a little Paul Walker CGI, but for the most part it looks really good. There's a child actor in this movie and she was fine. Forrest Whitaker was kind of cool, kind of overplayed it. There's a moment where you get the usual trust kind of broken, liar reveal conversation, but I was glad they got over it and paid more focus on the mission. It's a longer Star Wars film, but that's not saying that it's slow. You feel the time length, but it's actually pretty well paced. I'm just letting you know. That's pretty much what I got on negatives, because honestly, I don't really have a lot of problems with this movie. I think it's pretty great. It's a great exploration of the Star Wars universe and what Disney is doing with Star Wars on exploring characters or small moments or details in the original trilogy is awesome, because we're exploring even more on what this universe has to offer. It's taking more chances than George Lucas has ever took. I'm happy with the results here, and I'm even more happy on what might become in the future. Definitely check out the movie, which is kind of dumb to say because you're already planning on going to see it. So I'll just play the outro now. Later.